let me just say that what an honor and a privilege and a super pleasure it is for me to talk to London again, and to all these wonderful ladies and men who are joining us. And I just want you to know, people ask me, do I miss London? Do I miss being there? And I have to tell you, my response is always the same. No, I don't miss London. I miss the people. London is beautiful and it has a very special place in our hearts. But here in Eretz Yisrael, it's totally different for us, and we are living a dream. But the people I miss very much, and that includes all of you. So let us begin like this. Tomorrow, in Yirtz Hashem, we celebrate Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat. And I'd like to share a few insights into what seems to play kind of a minor role in the cycle of Ayomim Tovim. You know, besides eating fruit, davening for a nice esrog, speaking about how wonderful and beautiful Eretz Yisrael is. But how does this bring us closer to Hashem? How does this bring us closer to the Rabbanu Shalom? Now, we all know that if anybody that has heard any of my shiurim ever knows that I repeat over and over again that the concept of a moed, a Yom Tov, is a Yom Tov, meaning it's a process. It's a time that it needs to be used to attain our destiny. The word for destiny in Lashon HaKodesh is Yad, and the Moed is that which brings us to our Ya'ad. It brings us to what our destiny is, what it is Hashem wanted of us in creating the world and the role that we play in it. So what we have to understand is, how does Tu B'Shvat help us achieve this destiny? How do we get there? What does it do? What do we take out of the Yom Tov? My Rabbi, Rav Hutner Zechron Tzadik Livracha, always used to say, one should never say another Yom Tov has passed, but rather one should say, I've acquired another Yom Tov. And what are we acquiring with this Yom Tov tomorrow of Tu B'Shvat? So let us begin with this right at the core, that the word Shvat, Shevet, Shvat, is literally a branch. It's something that sprouts from a trunk and moves away in a particular and specific direction. That's what a Shevet is. The sons of Yaakov Avinu were called Shvatim. They were the tribes, but they're called Shvatim. Why are they called Shvatim? Because they stem from the trunk of Yaakov Avinu, and each one of them contributed something, the unique, from within their own character, to create Klal Yisrael, the Beis Yisrael. In fact, as a result of all that, all of us, each and every one of us, every single Jew, are also branches of that trunk. Klal Yisrael is called Yaakov because that is the trunk from which we emerged. You know, Mincha, when we daven Mincha on Shabbos, we say, Ato echad, v'shimcho echad, umi ka'amcha Yisrael go echad ba'oretz. You are one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Your name is one. And who is like me? Who is there like your nation, your people, Yisrael, goy echad ba'oretz? We're two echad. And the Maharal points out that the aleph in the word echad, echad is spelled aleph ches dalid. The aleph represents Yaakov Avinu because he was the trunk. He was the one from which everything emerges. The ches of echad, the 8, which is numerical value of 8, refers to the 8 sons of Rachel and Leah. Rachel had 2, Leah had 6, and that's the ches. And the dalid of echad refers to the 4 sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. That is Klal Yisrael. Now, during the month of Shvat, what takes place is that the trees begin to bud. And if I could show you outside in our magnificent, beautiful garden here in Eretz Yisrael, we just picked an orange that is just so sweet and delicious. There is the tree. You begin to see the budding of those summer fruits. that will be fully produced in the summer. So the Shvat is the absolute beginning of the budding of the trees and of the flowers. And the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah refers to it as Rosh Tu B'Shvat, as Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos. It's the Rosh Hashanah, the new year of the trees. Why? Because Rov Gishme Hashanah, the majority of the nutrients and the water and the rain that has fallen to be absorbed in the earth. And so there's a discussion whether the month is represented at the beginning of the month, like Beis Shammai says, or is it at the zenith of the month, like Beis Hillel says, but it doesn't really matter. The month of Shvat is the month when potential of the fruit-bearing trees begins to actualize. That's when things become ready to turn from potential to the real in this world.
How are you?
In most cultures, when we ask anyone in any culture, what season of the year represents youth? And they will all most likely say, of course, springtime, youth, flowering, budding, merging, youth. So that's a problem, because in Tanakh, Eov was speaking about his youth, and he referred to it as Yemei Charpi, the days of my winter. Now, who in the world would compare youth to winter? We all know, old man winter. You see this old man with a beard schlepping out. The year is ending. But in Torah perspective, or better, in reality, or in the truth, winter is connected to youth. The reason is that winter is the time when the land absorbs all the nutrients and all the moisture that it requires in order for the trees and plants to produce their fruit. So springtime is the time of productivity. Springtime is when you start acting and producing. And then it progresses into the full bloom of productivity, which is the summer. Youth is not the time to produce. Youth is the time to prepare. Youth is the time to prepare to produce, to gather knowledge, to gather wisdom, everything that's necessary in order to be able to contribute to in the production of this world that needs to be accomplished. Full productivity is in the summer, and that month is referred to as Av, the month of the summer. Spring, on the other hand, is called Aviv. Now that's strange. What's the relationship here? So there's an amazing idea that, again, I think most of you who know me know I have this passion for Lashon HaKodesh. For the Hebrew language is my love. My wife isn't even jealous. She loves it too. In Lashon HaKodesh, whenever you have a root and the last letter is repeated of the root, and you insert a yud in between those two letters, that demonstrates or represents the diminutive, making something smaller. So like, for example, you have eitz, which is a tree. Atzitz is a small plant. That's what an atzitz is. You have kale, aleph lamed, which is, of course, God. And then you have the concept of elil. That's a diminutive, an idol. It's something that has very or no power. It's an elil. And therefore, the springtime, which is Aviv, is the diminutive of Av, and it's the beginning of the productivity. The actual productivity falls in the month of Av, but the month of the beginning of spring is the Aviv. Now, we are in the saga of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when we read the Parshas of the Torah, Parshas Beshalach, and Bo, Beshalach, This is our whole redemption, our whole birth. This is the birth of Klal Yisrael. As the Rabbi Yecheskel said, this is the birth of the Jewish nation that we are learning about. And the more that takes part of our enters into our awareness, and we are able to make it part of our reality, that makes us Yotzei Mitzrayim. So when we study the plagues that were the Egyptians were afflicted with, there was the Makkah of Arbe. The Makkah of Arbe was the that plague which completed the destruction of all the agricultural productivity of Mitzrayim. And that took place in the month of Shvat. How do we know that? The Medrash Tanchuma says that each one of those makos, each one of the plagues, lasted for an entire month. Reb Nehemiah said that they were warned for a week, and the makkah lasted 3 weeks. And Reb Yehuda says, no, they were only warned. The makkah was only for 1 week, but they were warned for 3 weeks. Whatever it is, but the month, they all agree that each makkah lasted a month. Now we know that the last makkah was Makkah's Bechoros, and that took place when? In Nisan, before they left. So the Makkah before that was Choshech. Choshech was in Adar. That's the month before Nisan. And that's, of course, darkness for the Egyptians. But for Klal Yisrael, that's the month of La Yehudim, Ha'isa'ora, V'simcha, V'sasom, V'yikar Or, light. So we had light, they had darkness. The Makkah of Arbe, which is the one before Choshech, which totally destroyed the vegetation of Egypt, took place in the month of Shvat. So what do we see? Shvat, this month of Shvat, is the time when the positive emerges, and it is the time when all the destructive elements of the Egyptian culture in terms of the productivity of their land was totally eradicated. Find another interesting thing. At the end of the 40 years that the Jewish people were in the desert, so the Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu explained the Torah in depth to the Jewish people. When did this take place? So here's the pasuk: Vayihi barboim shana b'ashtei esrei chodesh, in the 40th year, in the 11th month, which is what? Tevei, Shvat. The Echad Lachodesh, on the first day of the month, Rosh Chodesh, Diber Moshe b'nei Yisrael k'chol asher tziva Hashem oso Elokim. And he spoke to them as God commanded upon them. Be'ever Yarden, at the edge of the Yarden, Be'eretz Moav, Hoil Moshe Be'er es Hatorah hazos leimor. Moshe began to explain the Torah in depth to the Klal Yisrael. When? In the month of Shvat. After Klal Yisrael absorbed the lessons of the 40 years in the Midbar, so their preparation was now complete. They were prepared. The youth of this new nation that was born out of Egypt were now ready to fully be productive in Torah. So when Moshe Rabbeinu prepared them over for 40 years to be able to produce what they needed to produce through the enormous power that they possessed through Torah. Now this comes, that's the world in general. Now let's get back to us personally. The first human being that was on the face of the earth was Adam Harishon. Chazal say, why was he named Adam? He was named Adam because he was created from the Adama, from the earth. He came out of the earth. He was formed from the earth. And the Maharal explains that the only value, and this I think we all know, the value of earth really is only in its potential. What you can grow from it, what you can build upon it. That's the value of earth. You have a piece of land in the Sahara Desert, isn't worth very much. You have it in Manhattan or in London, it's worth a lot. So it is with the Adam, man. The human being, we are all born only in potential. We're born with potential, and our mission is to fully develop that potential. That's our job. That's why we're here. We were given a potential. We were infused with a potential, and there is so much we can do. And it's our job to be able to activate that potential. It's interesting that in Gematria, the numerical value of the word Adam, man, is an aleph, a 1, and a dalet, and a 4, and a mem, which is 40. Together, it's 45. That's the same value as the word ma. Adam is ma. What is ma? Ma is what? That expresses the concept of potential. What is it? What's going to become? What's it going to do? What's going to be of it? That's what a ma is. Adam is ma. An animal, by the way, doesn't ever become more than it is. It doesn't become greater. It just gets bigger. It gets fatter. It gets taller, maybe stronger, but it certainly doesn't become greater. It doesn't actualize any potential whatsoever. That's why an animal is called in Lashon HaKodesh behema. And you take the word behema, you divide it in two, you got ba, ma. It's ma. What it is already there. The moment it's born, it's ma is there already. We know exactly what it is and what it's going to do, what it can become. The Gemara says that sure, it's a Gemara in Baba Kama, that sure, ben yomo korusho, an ox, the day it's born is already a shore, even though it's a teeny little calf, but it's called a shore. Ayil, a ram, ben yomo koru ayil, it's an ayil. Animals are what they are from the minute they come out. You know, I always say that nobody ever heard a donkey say to its foal, hey, when are you going to grow up and be a donkey? But isn't it true that all of us at one point or another were told by our parents, when you're going to grow up and become a mensch? We're not born mention. You have to become a mensch. And when we were born, we were full of the potential. And it is our job as we grow physically and as we grow spiritually to fulfill that potential. There's a very also an interesting thing that we find in relationship to this potential and to the earth and to the Mishnah is divided into 6 sections, 6 orders of the Mishnah. And the Gemara uses an acronym from a pasuk which says, "V'hoya emunas itecha chosen Yeshua's chochma v'das." Each one of them represents one of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. The first one is Zroim. Zroim is what we're dealing with now. Zroim is the word that is the subject of it is the planting, what you can plant, what you can't plant, how you do it, what you do it, what you can extract from the earth, and so on and so forth. That's the Zroim. The word that reflects Zroim in that pasuk is Emunah. The first order, the first word is V'hoya Emunah sitecha, Emunah. So Chazal explain why is it Emunah? What does Emunah have to do with planting? What does Emunah have to do with the land? Chazal explain like this: when a person plants a seed in the ground and he allows it to disintegrate, that requires enormous emunah in the Chei Olamim. Who is the Chei Olamim? That's the Almighty, who is the one who gives life to all existence. Hashem is called Chei Olamim, the one that gives life to everything, to the entire universe. So when you plant a seed, normally that seed could have been eaten, it had some value. You take the seed, you put it into the ground, and you have to have emunah that even though it turns into nothing almost, and it disintegrates completely, and from it something new comes out. That's really what life is all about, says the Maharal. Life, Chei Ha'olamim, is the revelation of a hidden potential, like, for example, a wellspring, a spring. when the water keeps on coming again and more and more. If there's a hidden source there, we don't know what causes the spring to produce the water, but the water continues to go and on and on, and it's forever new, always new water. So it is the Chaim, our life, who we are as human beings, what our life really is similar to Mayim Chaim. And by the way, the only thing that is not alive, like an animal or a human being, that it's called Chaim, is water, because it has that inner wellspring force that is constantly producing more and more. We all know, and science can tell us, and you talk to any botanist, the process of plant growth. They'll tell you what will happen, what happens to the seed. It disintegrates, and then it takes in absorbs the nutrients in the earth, and then it begins to grow and grow, and then we have a new plant. We know the process of plant growth, but no one knows what causes that process to work. No one knows what is that hidden force, which of course is the Rabbi Shalom. So that's the way all plant life emerges, and it's with the recognition of a Chei Ha'olamim. That's regarding plants. Now, what about regarding us? What about regarding people? The way we can actualize our potential is the same as the earth. That's why we're called Adam. We must attach ourselves to the Chei Ha'olamim. The way we attach ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with tefillah, with mitzvahs, learning Torah, everything that will acknowledge that Hashem is the true creator of heaven and earth, and he gives life to everything. In a world of science, in a world that is totally excluding creation and the creator, there is no room, no place for prayer. And I don't blame anyone. Who am I praying to if it doesn't exist in my world? And indeed, that's all you've got, which is nothing. But someone who recognizes the Chei Ha'olamim, the one who gives valuable life to everything with potential, he prays. Why does he pray? Because that's the process of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Man was created as one who prays. And of course, fulfilling mitzvahs and the study of Torah all attaches us to his will and to his wisdom. We were each created with great potential, and we each have our own mission to accomplish. And our job is to continually grow until that potential is fully actualized. You know, it says, there's a Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva said like this, that when Hashem looked at the world, and he was ready, before the world, he was ready to create the world, he wanted to choose the letter which would, because the letter carries within it all the force of what it represents. What letter would be the letter that represents the purpose of creation? So he wanted to, how will he begin the Torah? Because that's how we have been communicated with by Hashem through the Torah as to his will. So what word or what letter would begin the Torah? And Hashem looked at all the letters. He went from Tov, Shin, Reish, Kuf. He went through all the letters. No, until he came to the letter Beis. Once he came to the letter Beis, he says, oh, you're the one that I am going to start the Torah. And that's why the Torah begins, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim va'aretz. With that letter Beis. Now, what's so special about the letter Beis? In fact, the Ibn Ezra asks, oh, hello, very nice. Why Beis? So the Gemara says, because of bracha. Bracha begins with a Beis. So that's why Hashem chose Beis. But wait a minute, says the Ibn Ezra, there are many words that are not so nice that begin with a Beis. What's so special about the word bracha? However, he explains like this. Beis is 2, the numerical value. What is 2? 2 is the minimum of multiplicity. So if the numerical value of Beis is 2, it's the minimum of multiplicity. It describes the essence of what bracha is, because bracha means to increase. Bracha, when you give someone a bracha, you want that they should have more than what they have at this moment. The concept of a bracha is a concept of to increase. And when you look at the shoresh of the word bracha, it's a beis, it's a reish, and it's a chaf. Each letter is numerically equal to 2 in all the dimensions, beis in units, reish in hundreds, and chafs in tens. That's bracha. That's why Hashem chose that. Our mission is not to accept the world as we find it. We have a potential to make enormous contribution to bringing the world to the way Hashem wanted it to be. We have to contribute to increasing it so that the full potential is realized. And ultimately, the goal is kavod shamayim, for all of the universe and everyone in it. And like we say, Bayom hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad, the whole world will be one. In fact, when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad. You look, Rashi says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, God, who is one for us. He is our God. Who yeh Hashem echad, he'll be one for the entire world. That's our mission. It's not to accept the world as we find it, but to increase it. Bracha. And therefore, Hashem chose the beis and representing the bracha to start the communication to mankind, what the purpose of creation is all about. And that's the beis. And therefore, the Torah begins with the letter beis. So I'm sure many of you are thinking, what about Nebuch Pur Aleph? The Aleph was left out. It's not fair for the Aleph. Yeah, you got all the way to beis. He says, okay, we didn't even try Aleph. The answer is Hashem doesn't leave anything unfulfilled. And he says, don't worry, Aleph. With you represent my oneness. You're one. And therefore, the Torah itself, when I give it to the Bnei Yisrael, will start with an Aleph. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. The general Bereshis, that's for all of humanity. Klal Yisrael's beginning of Torah is Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of the land of Egypt. I am Hashem. And that's the Aleph. The next point is the connection between Tu B'Shvat and this parsha of Beshalach, because it's no coincidence that every year during the week that the parsha of Beshalach is read with the Shira of Az Yashir falls on Tu B'Shvat, or Tu B'Shvat occurs during that week. And it can't be a coincidence. Obviously, there's no coincidence in the Torah. So Chazal tell us like this, that at the Kriyas Yamsuf, that's where they said the Shira, the Oz Yashir Moshe, right, which we say in davening every morning. That was at Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. And there the Gemara tells us, Ra Shifcha Alayam, the Shifcha saw a Shifcha. A Shifcha is a maidservant, not on the highest level of a sanctity, just a plain ordinary shifcha, a maidservant. Ro'a ala yom, what she saw and experienced in crossing the sea, mashalo ro'a Yecheskel ben Buzi b'maisei merkava. She saw more than one of the greatest prophets, Yecheskel Hanavi, what he saw when he saw the Maisei Merkava, which you're not allowed even to learn publicly. You have to learn it privately with individuals. So what did they see? What does it mean, what she saw? Say Chazal, what she saw was how the Borei Olam, how the creator of heaven and earth directs his world and where he wants that world to go. From the beginning to the very end. They saw it all. Do you know what that means? They had absolute clarity in what's going on in this world of ours, something that is so totally lacking. They saw the Bara Olam directing the world to go from the moment of Bereshis all the way to the coming of Mashiach and Olam Haba. And that's why it's referred to as a Merkava. And Merkava is a chariot. The purpose of a chariot is to get you from point A to point B, and it leads you to your goal. And that's why the Avos HaKadoshim are called Merkava L'Shechina. They're the chariot that leads us to the Shechina. They were the first. They began. They're moving us towards, if we follow in their footsteps, they're moving us into the presence and into the acknowledging of the Shechina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, this is why Moshe Rabbeinu, when he composed together with Klal Yisrael the Oz Yashir, the shir that we sing in Parshas Beshalach on the splitting of the sea, Moshe Rabbeinu used the term Oz Yashir Moshe. Then Moshe will sing, the future tense, because we saw it all. We saw the goal. We saw the purpose of creation and how to get there. That's Oz Yashir. He will sing. And this is also why and where Chazal learn that Tchias HaMesim has to occur. Min Hatorah. The Torah is telling us, don't worry. Every human being, every Jew that is worthy of that name, Jew, will rise at Tchias HaMesim, will rejoin his body once again. That's the term Yashir. Ba'az Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael. Then the Jewish people and Moshe Rabbeinu will sing. What singing will they? This song they'll sing when? In the future, at Tchias HaMesim. The state of Tchias HaMesim, of body and soul together, was the way Hashem intended for Adam to live. In Gan Eden, it was the ultimate purpose of creation. When we will be once attached with our bodies, we will live our lives again as it was intended to be, without all the silly mistakes that we've all made throughout our lives. You know, at the in the Shiras Hayam, so one of the statements there is Sus v'rachvo Rama vayam, that the horse and rider were thrown into the sea together. While the rider was sitting on the horse, they were thrown into the water. No, what's that all about? Why do I need a boat? Throw him off the horse and let the horse drown, then he drowned. Why do they have to be brought down together? So obviously, there's a message here. And the message is this. When a person is riding on a horse, man thinks he's like, oh, he's in control. Yeah, but I don't know if you had this in England or not, but remember there was this cigarette called Marlboro. And the advertisement for was the Marlboro Man. What was the Marlboro Man? Sitting on a horse. What does that say? What does it scream? I'm in control. I got this horse. I'm in control. My power. It's all me. It's all contained within humanity. We are the center of the universe. And that's the pervading attitude of the world, of only nature, only science, without acknowledging there is a entire reality outside of our own limited physical reality. So when Hashem threw the horse and rider into the sea together, he showed them that the laws of nature are not immutable. The laws of nature can be totally canceled, not just manipulated. The laws of nature in the true reality don't apply. It was only the necessity in our world to set laws of nature. Sometimes Hashem comes into the reality of this world and manipulates the laws of nature, and sometimes he cancels them completely. So throwing the horse and rider together demonstrated that only Hashem directs what happens in the world. And Chazal say that even the Shivcha saw the Chei Ha'olamim. That's how the world functions. How the end of the process will be connected to the beginning. Whenever we witness the completion of a process, that's when we say Shira. The Kriyas Yamsuf was the completion of our redemption from Mitzrayim, And that was the completion of and they saw the whole world coming to its full circle. We came back full circle, back to the beginning, back to the Bereshis. The word shir, by the way, in Lashon HaKodesh, the word shir means a circle. The Gemara says that if you find money scattered around in a public place, you can take it because the person already gave up hope. But if it was set up in a circular fashion, says the Gemara, ke'ein shir, like a shir, which is circular, a circle, somebody did it and he didn't give up. He did it on purpose. A circle, when you think about our true circle, not just the circles that we go, it's true circle. The first itty bitty teeny arc of that circle already tells you where it's going to end up. It's going to end up back at the beginning. That's what a shir is all about. That's what the song was all about. We saw from Bereshis all the way to Bayom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. And it's so interesting when we complete saying the Psukei de Zimra in the morning. The bracha we make is Habocher B'Shirei Zimya Melech Keil Chei Ho'olamim. It's so wonderful to realize how everything fits in together. The end of the Psukei de Zimra, praising Hashem, He is Keil Melech B'Shirei Zimra. We say it with a shir of Keil Chei Ho'olamim. Now, this is obvious why Shabbos Shira and Tu B'Shvat usually fall in the same week, because they both express this idea of actualizing our potential, actualizing the potential that we have, and that nature's laws are changeable. They both express our attachments to Chei Ho'olamim. Shabbos Shira, Tu B'Shvat, all of that says we are really connected in a powerful way to the Chei Ho'olamim. The month of Shvat is the beginning of the renewal process, as we said. It's the root, the beginning, the first budding of the month of Nisan, when the actualization truly takes place. If our winter and our Shvat are as lived as they ought to be, we will be prepared to complete the process with the overwhelming miracles, the nisim that come from the other reality, from the true reality, like we did in Adar and Nisan. Shvat is the gateway into Adar and Nisan. Adar represents the manipulation of nature, and Nisan represents the total abrogation of the laws of nature. And that preparation is all set in the month of Shvat. I'd like, if I still have a little bit of time, okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the month of Shvat from a different perspective. The Tur, at the beginning of the laws of Rosh Chodesh, says that all of our holiday, Yamim Tovim, the Shalosh Regalim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, they correspond to the three Avos, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The 12 months, each one of them correspond to one of the 12 Shvatim. So you have the 12 Shvatim and the 12 Chadashim. So that's the 12 months we're familiar with. We know there's Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz. We know the order. But what's the order of the Shvatim? So there's a discussion as to which order of the Shvatim. But both the Gra and the Arizal, they all agree that the order spoken about here is the order that they camped in the desert and the way they traveled in the desert. So you had 4 camps. You had Degel Machane Yehuda, Degel Machane Ruvain, Degel Machane Ephraim, and Degel Machane Dan. Connected to the camp of Yehuda was Yisachar and Zvulun. Connected to the camp of Ruvain was Shimon and Gad. Connected to the camp of Ephraim was Menashe and Binyamin. And connected to the camp of Dan was Asher and Naphtali. Now, so let's put the correspondence together. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan is Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. Tammuz of Elul is Ruvain, Shimon, Gad. Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev is Ephraim, Menashe, Binyamin, and Teves, Shvat, and Adar are Don, Usher, and Naphtali. So obviously, the month of Shvat relates to Shevet Usher. Now, what is so special about the connection between Usher and the month of Shvat? So if you take a look, when Yaakov Avinu gave the 12 tribes a bracha, the bracha he gave to Shevet Usher has to do with oil. And when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the bracha, it also has to do with oil. Yaakov Avinu said, Me'eh Asher Shmeina Shemen Lachmo. His food is going to be very fat, full of oil. Yehi Ritzuyei Tovel B'Shemen Raglo is what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Moshe Rabbeinu said he will be beloved by his brothers, V'Tovel B'Shemen Rago, and he'll immerse his feet in oil. What does that all mean? The Gemara says that Usher's portion, why oil, was noted for its abundance in olive trees. And they were the ones that supplied all the oil, the Shemen HaMishcha, all that which was necessary for the Beis HaMikdash, all the oil necessary that Usher provided. They had so much oil that it was compared to, like we spoke about earlier, a spring that constantly keeps flowing and flowing. So too, Usher was the land of Usher, constantly giving forth with oil, ever renewing its supply. That's point one about Usher. Number two about Usher, the Gemara says, it's a medrash, that the daughters of Usher, all the women of Usher, were so very special. They were absolutely unique in that they merited to marry kings and Kohanim Gedolim, the high priests, who were anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha. So we have to make a determination here. What is the relationship of Usher to oil and oil to Shevet, to the month of Shvat? In Tehillim, there's a pasuk that we say, Hinei Matov u'manoyim shevet achim gam yachad. I'm sure you all know it. It's the song, Hinei Matov u'manoyim. It's one of the first songs we all learn, right? It goes with Zum Gali Gali. When about Shvat, about Tu B'Shvat, that's what we were singing, Zum Gali Gali and Hinei Matov u'manoyim. But it's a pasuk in Tehillim, and it's speaking about Aaron and Moshe. And it says, Hinei Matov u'manoyim shevet achim gam yachad. When brothers live together, Kishemen hatov al harosh, like good oil on the head. Yored al hazokon, which when he was anointed, Moshe anointed Aaron, so the oil dripped from his head onto his beard. Zikan Aaron sheyorad al pi midoso. It was Aaron. He was talking about the love, the smoothness, the brotherly love of Aaron and Moshe. That's David HaMelech in Tehillim. Shlomo HaMelech, when he in Koheles, he says like this: always your clothing should be clean and white. V'shemen al roshcha yechsar, and oil on your head should not be lacking. Re'ei chayim im isha asher ahavta, and then you will see a true life, a true relationship with the woman that you love. This teaches us that a true relationship is one of shalom, one of smoothness, one of peace. Shemen al roshcha tamid. And it's so very interesting that in the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave to Asher, he said, May Asher shmeina lachmo. But the portion of Asher is going to be very, very rich. Now we know that Eretz Yisrael is an Eretz Zovas Chola V'Dosh, but there was something special about the portion of Asher. And that's why it says, May Asher Shmeino Lachmo. It doesn't mean that he got necessarily a better portion. But what it is that May Asher, because Asher was Asher, that brought about that his area should be so fruitful with olives to be able to produce all this smoothness and beauty. Netziv says that the Midah of Asher was an imus, pleasantness, and a total commitment to shalom, and discouraged machloikes. They stayed away from argumentation. They stayed away from machlokas. They didn't have anything to do with people fighting, and they tried to bring about peace. The daughters of Usher merited to marry the leaders of Klal Yisrael because they embodied the midah of Shemen Zayis, which is me'imus, pleasantness, and shalom, and peace. You know, it doesn't say that the daughters of Usher were so very beautiful that the kings couldn't resist them. Rather, it's their internal beauty that we're talking about here. Their midos were infectious and encouraged their husbands to avoid machlokas. They encouraged them to be at peace with the world and to bring them closer to one another. So now we have a concept of what Usher represents. But what does that have to do with Tu B'Shvat? What does it have to do with the month of Shvat? Now we understand that the relationship between Shvat and Usher was, and by the way, he was born on the 4th day of Shvat, on Dalet Shvat, but his unique connection to the month of Shvat is that in order for there to be productivity, there has to be peace. For without it, everything is stifled, can't reach its potential, things get disturbed. Without a sense of external peace and internal peace, things won't reach their true potential. And therefore, Usher, whose midah is neimus, pleasantness, shalom, symbolized by the Shemen Zayis, relates to Shvat, the month of Shvat, because his midah encourages productivity. The Chavetz Chaim said something very amazing. Chavetz Chaim said like this, you know, we're all waiting for the Gula. We're all waiting for the third Beis HaMikdash to be built. He says, what if there was a building campaign to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, and build the third Beis HaMikdash, and it would only cost $100 trillion. Now, you can't, used to be 100 million when I first gave this year, and then it became billions because nobody talked about millions anymore. But now everybody's talking about trillions. So 100 billion, trillion, quadrillion dollars to build the Beis HaMikdash. Do you doubt that in a couple of hours, all of that money would be there? There's enough Jewish money to produce that. Yet the Chavetz Chaim says to us, listen, well, we won't have to spend not one red penny to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. All we need is to rectify the Averis of Lashon Hara and Sinas Chinam. Second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of these Averis. And this is what we must correct in order to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, it's obvious. Mashiach hasn't come yet. That means we haven't corrected this yet. And Chazal tell us in any generation that the Beis HaMikdash was not rebuilt, it's as if they destroyed it. And it isn't here yet. The Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, covered by some gold monstrosity sitting on the Abakim HaMikdash. And we're allowing it. Why? Not because we don't want to build it, not because they won't let us build it, not because of the Sinas Chinam and the Lashon Hara. The Netziv said in his introduction, that's what I've told Yehuda Berlin, who was one of the Rosh Hashivas in Volozhin in Europe, in the introduction to his Sefer on Bereshis, describes the precise nature of Sinas Chinam. You want to know what Sinas Chinam is? Caused hatred, reason for no reason, hatred for no reason. So he says that at the time of the Churban, each person suspected that anyone whose form of Yerushalayim was different from his own was either an apostate or an apikoires or a tzeduki, not frum. You know, those of you know me, I hate that word frum. Hate it like a passion, but there's no better word to describe it right now. You're not frum enough. There was no tolerance for another's approach to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No willingness to admit that there are minhagim that are not necessarily my minhagim, but they're also legitimate. Share with you, when I was growing up some 60 years ago in Chicago, can't believe I'm saying those words, but that's the truth. When I was growing up, we couldn't write off any Orthodox Jew at all. Torah observance was weak, and anyone who was a Shomer Shabbos or kept kosher was cherished. There was no need to ask any further questions. I remember I used to say, I knew every yarmulke in Chicago. Chicago had so many Jews, but there was no fulfillment of mitzvahs. There are almost 500,000 Jews in Chicago. Today, not today, then. Today, our numbers have grown in terms of those who are committed to Torah. And we've become, has such enormous numbers of people who are religious and study and learned. But we've divided ourselves into numerous groups, and we limit ourselves just to those groups, to people who are just like us. Now, tolerance is important. Tolerance is good. But we're not expected to be tolerant of everything. To be tolerant of society's values that are wrong, and every depravity is accepted and even legalized, that of course not. But our tolerance has to be a little bit more subtle. Of course I accept you. I just don't like what you're doing. There's the Yamin Mekarev. I bring you closer to me because you're my brother, you're my sister, you're someone who I care about because we are part of that same trunk. The stronger hand brings people closer. The small docha, the weaker hand pushes away and very, very subtly explains that our ideologies may be different, but that it has to be coupled with Avas Hashem and Avas Yisrael. I love you, but what you're doing is not right. Unfortunately, because of our success in numbers, we've lost a lot of that tolerance. A very interesting story. Rabbi Zev Gold, who was a leader of the Mizrahi in those years, and he happened to be invited to Baltimore to speak to a totally secular audience. And while he was there, he was invited and stayed as a guest by Rabbi Ruderman, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Israel. So somebody came over to Rav Gold and said to him, Rabbi Gold, why are you staying with Rabbi Ruderman? He wasn't a Mizrachist. He wasn't someone that belongs together with us. And he said, you know something? Perhaps I may differ with Rabbi Ruderman about one mitzvah, the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, and Zion, the role of Zionism, and so on. But with you, I differ about dozens of mitzvahs. We may be aware of our differences, but we also have to keep in mind and see how much in common, how much we have in common. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who was the head of the Eidah Charedis, and Rav Kook, they had differences, big differences in their approach to Eretz Yisrael. But they put them all aside. They traveled arm in arm to all the outside Yeshuvim of Eretz Yisrael where people were not keeping Shabbos, and tried to help them to strengthen their connection to Shmir Shabbos. So we are now in the month of Shvat, the month of Usher, the month of Sheben Zayis. It epitomizes the midas of pleasantness and shalom. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should just grant us that we will live according to a tefillah. There was a Rabbi Elimelech, who said an amazing thing, and he made a tefillah, and we should all kind of take this tefillah to heart. Hashem, help me to see the milas, the attributes, the positive attributes of my brothers, and that I should feel it deeply in my heart. That means I mean it with sincerity. Now, as we are waiting for our Geula now, and Chazal told us it will mirror the Geula from Mitzrayim, we will see wonders, overwhelming wonders that go out, not just manipulation of nature, but will totally abrogate any laws of nature. Gravity will mean nothing. None of the laws of nature will be fixed. And it's our job to cleave the olam minhaga noyag, the way the world of science and the world of laws of nature, and connect ourselves to the chei olamim, ha-olamim, who gives life to all the worlds. All we have to do is open our eyes. And if we open our eyes, we will see that this world that we are living in, the state that we are in now, specifically with this terrible, terrible plague that we're all suffering from, No one knows what to do, not the doctors, not the scientists, certainly not the politicians. They don't know what to do with Corona. They don't know what to do. What is Hashem saying? Don't look to them. You have another place to look. If our eyes are open, we'll see the Cheo Elamim, the Creator, and perhaps, we will see that He has given us this period of isolation to be a little bit more introspective and measure where we stand in terms of our sincere feelings and recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In this way, with Hashem's help, we'll be able to use Tu B'Shvat, this wonderful, wonderful Yontif, not minor at all, because it's going to prepare us for the Nisim of Adar and the Nisim of Nisan, and may it happen speedily, b'mheira b'yameinu, amen.